محاولة لتصحيح التاريخ الحديث ليس من وجهة نظر المنتصر بل من وجهة نظر المهزوم. محكمة العراق الدولية من الداخل. معكم زينب الصفار، تابعونا. أكثر من تريليون دولار هدرت في الحرب على العراق منذ عملية الصدمة والرعب في آذار مارس 2003، وأكثر من 5,000 قتيل أمريكي و32,000 جريح، يقابلهم مليون عراقي سقطوا و5 ملايين آخرين هجروا. أطفال يعانون تشوهات خلقية سببها اليورانيوم المنضب، تفجيرات يومية لا تنتهي، وخدمات مدنية مدمرة، ودولة مقطعة الأوصال. هذه النتائج ويزيد خلفها العدوان الأمريكي والاحتلال العشوائي للعراق بذرائع واهية. مسيرات واحتجاجات في كل أنحاء العالم خرجت منددة بغزو أمريكا وحلفائها للعراق. الرأي العام الشعبي العالمي ضرب بعرض الحائط من قبل إدارة بوش وحلفائه. الآن وبعد 10 سنوات على الغزو الأمريكي للعراق، لا أحد ولا دولة ولا مسؤول حكوميا يتحمل مسؤولية العراق النازف. كيف لا تجرى أي تحقيقات أو تقام دعاوى قضائية ضد المسؤول؟ ومن يدفع ثمن الإفلات من العقاب؟ محكمة دولية أنشئت من أجل العراق بمبادرة انطلقت من مجموعة من الناشطين والخبراء القانونيين والمفكرين ومنظمات غير حكومية من كل أنحاء العالم في 2003 بجلسات عقدت في عواصم مختلفة وختمت في اسطنبول عام 2005. أحد أعمدة هذه المحكمة الدولية من أجل العراق الناشطة في حقوق الإنسان ومديرة دار متس التركية للنشر المؤلفة موغه سوكمان. ماذا تخبرنا عن ظروف انعقاد هذه المحكمة وجلساتها وما تمخض عنها وأبرز توصياتها؟ وهل ختامها يعني أن العدوان على العراق انتهى بخروج المحتل؟ موغه سوكمان, editor and publisher from Metis Publishers in Istanbul, peace and human rights activist, former chair of PEN Turkey Writers in Prison Committee for many years, and also one of the founding members of the World Tribunal on Iraq. Welcome to The Inside.
Thank you.
To start, ma'am, with the last title, which is one of the founding members of the World Tribunal on Iraq, what can you tell us about the WTI, about its foundation, and the aim of such kind of tribunal?
Right. You know, there was a very strong anti-war movement in Turkey. And especially just before the Iraqi war, we were just trying to stop the war with our hands. That's how we were feeling, actually. And it was uniting people from all walks of life, very different people that wouldn't normally go into a coalition. We were working together easily for the same aim. So when the war started, actually, without telling each other, we just found ourselves in Taksim Square. Thousands of people just poured in saying that, you know, we won't let this happen. And we will not let you this time to get away with this. This was the feeling we were in. And I was working in a peace initiative. And myself and a friend, Ayşe Berktay, we came up with the idea of doing a tribunal.
Who is jailed now.
Who is unfortunately jailed now for a different reason. We will come to that maybe. So we said, we remembered the Bertrand Russell Tribunal that was done for the Vietnam War. And we said, why don't we make a tribunal that will not let these people, let US, United States and its allies make us forget history, because we know the victorious rewrite history. They make you forget what has happened, because the media, the mainstream media, is never saying what's happening. So there's a lot of misinformation and disinformation. And if we don't put these down, that was the main reason. These will just be swept away. You know, in 2 years' time, you may hear that these things never happened. So this was our main thing.
To document.
To document. That was the first thing that came to our mind. The second thing was we needed to do something. We were going out of our minds. We didn't want to feel helpless. So let us use, since we can't stop the tanks with our bodies, which some of our friends did, because
As human shields.
some of our friends went to be human shields. But this is, you can't keep doing only that. So another thing, let us remind ourselves that we are together. Let us remind ourselves that we are subjects too, that we are not only subjected to things, but we are also capable of reacting as the world, as a global body. So this was our, and it turns out that in other parts of the world, other people were thinking about this. So
because, you know, when the people took to the streets in Turkey, it also coincided with hundreds of thousands and actually millions. Of people around the globe
exactly.
were also taking to the streets, you know, in protest to the invasion of Iraq.
Exactly. So we started going to social forums. We started propagating that let's do something together. And in Brussels, there was this Bertrand Russell Foundation meeting of peace and human rights. We went there with Ayşe Berktay and gave a proposal. We said to the world public of peace activists, we said, can we do this together? And everybody joined in. So we made a meeting in Istanbul discussing how are we going to make this tribunal? Because we were so different from each other. Some of the people were saying, okay, we're blaming only the international institutions. They should be corrected. Other people were saying they shouldn't exist at all. Some people were saying, I'm doing it because I'm an Iraqi nationalist. Other people were saying, I'm doing it because I'm a world citizen. I don't belong to any nationality.
What does this platform really indicate here?
We needed to understand what the guiding principles would be in working together. Independent people, some independent organizations, just working through the internet in a non-hierarchical basis is not easy. We didn't have a leader, we didn't have an organization, we didn't have any funding. We were just citizens, people, activists, and we needed to understand how we can work together. So this is why we needed to have a constitution, a 3-page one, a very small one, which was easy.
What did it focus on?
First of all, where do we get our legitimacy from? This was the question. We're not a legitimate tribunal. No formal institution endorses us. So where does our legitimacy get from? So this question we answered, for example, resisting Iraqi people. This is where we get our legitimacy from. Or that the institutions are not working. This is where we get our legitimacy from. Just you know, bringing the principles of international law. This is where we get our legitimacy from. So, and then the task, we describe the task for us. What can we do? First, as we say, we will record what's happening. We will first of all say what's happening. Record and document what's happening. And then investigate the allegations that were happening. So we will listen to
investigate
witnesses.
it legally, scientifically, economically, everything.
Exactly, politically
and
culturally. And then we all decided and agreed that this was also being done to us. What was being done is not only done against the Iraqis.
How is it done against you?
Because first of all, they are undermining all the, you know, we're bringing into discussion all the international institutions and laws. They are really being attacked. The future of the world is being attacked. The cultural heritage of the world is being destroyed. Our hopes for a future are being destroyed. Our hopes for a peaceful future is being destroyed. So we are being taught that if you're naughty, you're next. First of all, look at what happened to these people. We lied, we made up evidence, and we attacked them, and nothing is happening. So you may be next, behave. You know, this is teaching by example.
The message, yes.
This is the message. Plus, we can take the world's money and destroy it, because depleted uranium is being used. You can never clean depleted uranium. So generations after generations of Middle Easterns will be getting a lot of illnesses that are irreversible, be they in Iraq or Southeast Turkey or other parts of the world. We will be destroying the heritage of the Iraqis, the cultural heritage. So you will never know what was written in Iraq that are, you know, humanities resources also.
As you said, Ms. Sokman, that they will try to rewrite history because they think that they are, you know, the victors.
Exactly.
But are they really victorious in Iraq?
Luckily.
Were they victorious in Iraq?
I should say, luckily, such a victory is not possible. You cannot crush all of humanity. You can kill them one by one or in millions, but you can't crush humanity as a whole. This is what we were trying to uphold, actually. That as long as one human being stays back to remember and tell the story, you won't be victorious. This was the message we were trying to give, and which I think did come across in a way. And so the wonderful thing was people joined in from all over the world.
Weren't you in fear of the challenges that you're going to face from the media, from the mainstream media, from the coverage of your tribunal?
This is a good question, because of course the mainstream media, who were also doing some, let's say, oil work, who were also parts of multinational companies, conglomerates, they were really for the war. They were advocating the war, and they were making fun of us for trying to venture into something as ourselves. You know, what do you have behind you? Nothing. Who do you think you are? You're nothing. But then what happened is, when we started, especially in the culminating session in Istanbul, we got incredible media coverage because thousands of people poured in, and they could just not avoid it anymore, just not, pretend not to see it.
موغه, what was the end results and the, you know, the conclusions of the World Tribunal on Iraq?
First of all, of course, there was this declaration of the jury, and if I may do so, I would like to go through the other sessions very briefly.
How many sessions were they?
There were like 20. There were 20 sessions all over the world, from different places, from Brussels to Stockholm to Hiroshima, and working on the complicity of their own governments.
Okay.
And the legality of putting Iraq's public enterprises and resources on sale, legality of war in place of international law, for example, or the use of depleted uranium, humanitarian, cultural, political sides. And then we came together in the culminating session. And
here in Istanbul.
Here in Istanbul. And we wanted to, first of all, form a jury of conscience. And we want these people to represent the conscience of the world. So we invited very different people. A mine worker from Turkey came to testify, or to listen to the advocates. And a mother from the Madres de Mayo came from Argentine, for example. A priest from South Korea came, who had gone on a hunger strike to stop the Iraq war, for example.
And Arundhati Roy.
Arundhati Roy was chairing the jury. And we had, for example, an Iraqi journalist whose family was killed in the attacks. So Salam al-Jaburdi, he came to testify on that. And Arundhati was, as you say, Arundhati Roy was chairing
chairing. And she said, actually, in her introduction of the book that you authored about the World Tribunal on Iraq, she said, quote, "It is an attempt to correct the record, to document the history of the war, not from the point of view of the victors, but of the temporarily, and I repeat the word temporarily, vanquished."
Yes, of course, it's not an easy war. We all know that. We know that it's not easy to counter these forces, united coalition that are attacking the peoples of the world. It's not an easy thing. But then we want to show that we have so many good people on our sides, first of all, like Arundhati Roy herself, or incredibly important law people, politicians, literary people, cultural people, who are not a part of this game, even though they're capable of being there. You know, they're professors in important universities, but they don't want to play the game of their governments. So first of all, we wanted to break this image of us and them, You know, this was
The
what
George
Bush was
W.
saying.
Bush,
Exactly,
yes.
he was saying, if you're not with us,
He's
you're
coining
with
the
enemy.
politics, yes, in
And
his
we
own
said,
words.
look at the enemy. We are the enemy? Okay. So our enemy should be questioned. The enemy of such people
Should be questioned.
should be questioned. It's not because it was
The vanquished,
easy. Exactly,
as she
because
said.
it was easy to show the Iraqis who were not covered at all by the press as the, you know, as the victim or the monsters. But how can you show LSE professor of law suddenly as the monster, or Richard Falk, or, you know, Johan Galtung, or other names that were, you know, taking part. So this was one thing to, in our solidarity, the solidarity itself was a statement. And then, of course, we took up very different aspects, as I was saying. First of all, the role of international law and institutions. This was important because we believe UN and other institutions did not do their job. They were guilty. And so we really investigated into why they were guilty. Professors of law and other experts, you know, worked on principles to say why UN should be found guilty, why other...
Red-handed when it comes to the war against Iraq. Moghe, we're going, sorry to stop now for a short break, and then we'll be back to detail more on the conclusions and whatever you've talked about in the course of your book. The Inside will be back after the break. Stay with us. Welcome back to The Inside from Turkey. Welcome back, Moghe Sukman. Well, you were talking a bit about the highlights, the major highlights of the World Tribunal on Iraq. What can you tell us more, please?
Yes, as I was saying, you know, the role of the international law and institutions were one important point because, as you were saying, they were collaborating. Instead of checking what US and its allies were doing, they were just letting it happen. So I'm happy to say that we had two resigned former assistants to General Secretary of UN with us, Hans von Sponeck and Dennis Holliday, who came to say why they resigned, how UN was not doing its job, for example. And then we had, of course, a session on the responsibility of governments. Turkey, we had a session on the responsibility of the Turkish government. We had a session on, of course, the responsibility of the European governments. Why European Union had and how it had helped this war and occupation instead of trying to stop it. We were taking the responsibility of the Arab governments also under scrutiny. So these were the governments and institutions part. First of all, taking case by case what was done. And then, of course, came the accountability of the media. As you were just saying, the media just closed its eyes to what was happening, and sometimes just on the contrary, propagated that there should be a war, and even in Turkey,
and there were actual weapons of mass destruction, which is the main pretext for the war back then.
Exactly. So we had this coined term of embedded journalists
in Iraq,
which really killed journalism. It was an insult to
so
journalism.
It's you're either also with us or you're against us, so we don't help you or we don't secure you.
Exactly. So you couldn't have independent media there. So we did invite those brave people who were the independent media, who were there risking their lives. The second day we just discussed the concrete crimes in Iraq, the very concrete torture, killing, raping, all those. And we had one American soldier who accepted to come and talk.
In fact, just recently in The Guardian, they said that the Pentagon admitted that they were responsible for the torture crimes in Iraq and elsewhere.
And so late, after the death of so
even
many
Petraeus
people.
was even entangled in it.
After the death of so many people. Isn't this a bit late? I mean, isn't it so? Is it so easy? This is what you wonder. It shouldn't be so easy to just say, oh, sorry, did I bump into you? No, it was much more than that.
And especially that they came with a pretext which nothing was found there concerning the weapons of mass destruction.
And all of this was also discussed because we had experts on weapons control that came and told us how they inspected and how there was nothing, but how their reports were changed. We documented all those.
And by the way, Müge, the U.S. administration, the Bush administration back then, acted unilaterally. Even the UN, they gave them their opinion of not to go to war, but they sidelined it and they just went to war. So it seems that the UN is a bit crippled when it comes to such unilateral policies, when it comes to Iraq, when it comes to occupied Palestine.
And they don't even accept the International Criminal Court.
Sure.
So that's another point, you're very right. But then, I mean, they didn't really work like we did, like the peace activists in the world. We worked much diligently than UN, I should say. Not, I don't mean the inspectors, but I mean in general, UN wasn't really...
As a body,
it wasn't really working as hard as it should. So as you were saying, it was crippled. EU was crippled.
Yes.
In the same way, in my eye, in the eye of the Turkish public, I would say. EU really lost a lot at this Iraqi war. They lost their credibility immensely.
Yes, this is a very important aspect, I think.
We should
and
not
I believe
skip it.
that you shouldn't turn a blind eye to.
Exactly. What's happening in Syria today also breaks my heart, because the same cultural heritage getting destroyed there is our
Which
own
is one
heritage.
of the oldest capitals in the world.
I know, and it's incredible that we're allowing it to happen. How will I persuade my son not to be a militant person, not to do violence?
Yes. How much was your book and the efforts that you've done through the World Tribunal on Iraq in the field work and having the tribunal and writing about it, how much was it a source of inspiration to the global resistance movements?
I do hope it was fed by the global resistance and it fed into the global resistance movement, because I know it was published all in different small publishing houses. Interlinked Olive Branch published in the United States of America, and I know it was, you know...
so it provided a kind of grounds for action.
Yes, there were two documentaries. One documentary made by the Istanbul group, especially on what was happening in the culminating session. But it's not a matter of just tribunals, if you ask me. I think it's more a matter of having worked non-hierarchically without any fundings in 20 different countries for 2 years as a global subject. And even though having very different ideas about other political issues, uniting to work to say no to war. And I think, for example, this is feeding back to the Occupy movements.
In the final session of the World Tribunal on Iraq, in June 2005, you quote in your speech John Berger in his message of support to the WTI. He said, quote, the new tyrants, incomparably overarmed, can win every war both militarily and economic. Yet they are losing the war of communication. They are not winning the support of world public opinion. Now, currently speaking, is it still the case? And how far could we communicate the message? How far do we have freedom of expression here?
Well, first of all, of course, we do not have a freedom of expression. I should start by saying, unfortunately. But, first of all, just imagine, would people really believe can they now attack Iran just like they attacked Iraq? Can they now attack Syria just like they attacked Iraq? It's no longer possible, is it? Can they attack other countries as blatantly and as easily as they were able to attack Iraq, should be the question. They did lose that war. Everybody knew they were lying. Everybody, by everybody I mean, of course, the world masses, world opinion. We knew what was happening, and they, as you were saying, even Pentagon is now telling that they were lying. So they did lose one war in that respect. There is no freedom of expression, but there is also a lot of communication among people. People don't look at Guardian only anymore. People have learned not to get their news from New York Times. People have learned not to get their news from Hürriyet in Turkey, for example. People have found a lot of ways to communicate.
How much is freedom of speech at stake? Free speech is at stake in Turkey.
In Turkey, yes. Okay. Well, I need to quote some reports on this. First, Committee to Protect Journalists report issued on October 22 of last year. They found 61 journalists in prison in Turkey. And the 18 independent experts at the UN Human Rights Committee reviewed Turkey's human rights record, and they declared in November 2012 that the vagueness of the laws in Turkey led to a lot of violations of freedom of expression and human rights. And unfortunately, we feel even mainstream journalists can be thrown out of their jobs if they're dissidents, if they're speaking against the government, if they're fearless, they may find themselves jobless. This has happened over and over in Turkey.
But it has also been said that regarding this, the lack of freedom of speech in Turkey, that Turkey is not being able to get into the EU.
Well, of course, I mean, I wish that was the reason. Then I would feel more secure and confident. But EU is not by itself, unfortunately, upholding its own values. Just like we have just discussed in the case of the Iraq war, is EU really raising the banner of free media, free freedom of expression? Is it really true to its values that it claimed? I can't say. For example, just very recently, a petition was taken to the Parliament, EU Parliament, saying European firms, European companies are being used to suppress the dissidents in Arabic countries because they are selling to some groups certain devices that are used in torture or used to tap telephones or other things. They named names. This was never, it has not come up for years. We knew that this was happening. There are reports on this, there are books on this. Do you know why this came to the agenda today? Because they like the dissidents in Syria. They're pet dissidents, I should say, if I may.
Yeah, they harbor those.
They harbor this. So now they want the dissidents to be free. When these dissidents in Tunisia or in Egypt or in Syria, or not in Syria, but in Iraq, were being tapped and tortured with European devices, this was not taken to. This was not taken to the Parliament.
Right, Ms. Mogheh Sokman, editor and publisher, and one of the founding members of the World Tribunal of Iraq, peace and human rights activist. Many thanks indeed for joining us on this interview from Istanbul in Turkey.
Thank you very much. شكرا.
You're most welcome. You're most welcome. إذا لقاء جديد في الأسبوع المقبل مع ضيف جديد وقضية جديدة ودائما من الداخل. المزيد من التواصل بريدنا theinside@almayadeen.net. إذا theinside@almayadeen.net من فريق عمل من الداخل الذي رافقني إلى تركيا، من جمال حيدر، إلي فضول، ومن زينب الصفار، ومن جوني حنوش. دمتم بخير.